On a certain spring day, in a remote corner of the world, a handful of men, like strange voyagers from another planet, set foot to a small Pacific island. Who are these weirdly garbed visitors who so gingerly pick their way forward? And what do they expect to find on this barren strip of coral sand? Can there be any plan, any purpose in this jumbled mass of pieces and bits? And yet, why the expectancy, like probers into antiquity entering the sealed tomb of a pharaoh? Why the diligent, absorbing searching into ruins? Or are these ruins? A scant 2 months before, these men arrived from the United States. Then they were even as you and I. And only 3 months before that, this island was just a spot on a map, known only to the captains of battered tramp steamers. But this island, a part of an atoll known in the Micronesian tongue as Eiwentok, had a date with destiny. 7,500 miles away, the planners met and began to mesh the gears which are to change the face of the island. And so it is that tropical Eiwentok comes to know the mechanical prowess of men who have changed many a similar island during the late Pacific War. For this was virgin land, and as always, since man first entered a wilderness, tangled and matted vegetation must be removed for working space, for elbow room. The surface is then rearranged into new patterns as machines first dig up, then level the coral soil. But simple flattening alone is not enough. Cement and tar are added to form a hard, level surface. Islands of our atoll now begin to assume the character of gigantic tabletops, bowing to the engineer's exacting transit. But there is more to come. Underwater obstacles are blasted. A causeway is built to link two islands. And mushrooming across the face of the atoll, a tent city for living quarters, Quonset huts for supplies. So the islands take the shape, the form of their planners. A native of this sun-baked area of the world would be amazed and bewildered at these strange doings. To an American, most of these things would seem routine, but there are some things not even he could explain. For what purpose these low cubes constructed of reinforced concrete oddly mixed with nuts and bolts? Why this tower in the middle of the lagoon? For what reason this underground cable? But most of all, why this steel giant dominant on the landscape? It is clear that this is not an ordinary island. This is not just another supply base, not just another landing strip. This tower rising in the sky, to be the holder of fissionable material, this A0 tower, gives us the essential clue. This is an atomic island, a test island, a gigantic laboratory island. This, then, is the reason for the hard-packed sand, ready for test instruments, free of dust, clear of obstacles, like a porcelain tabletop in a physics laboratory. In a way, it seems strange indeed that a controlled scientific experiment should take place in a remote corner of the world. Why not the laboratories of the Atomic Energy Commission, or the laboratories of our colleges and universities, or even the New Mexico desert? Furthermore, why can't we cut down the amount of fissionable material and have a small atomic explosion? The scientific answer is simple. There is no such thing as a small atomic explosion. A definite known quantity, a specific critical mass is essential before a chain reaction will occur. All the laboratories and production plants of the Atomic Energy Commission contribute to the development of atomic energy and the manufacture of fissionable materials. The Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory develops the methods of using such materials and weapons. These must be proof tested. One point is positive. An adequate laboratory, a laboratory with space, is essential for our continued progress in peacetime, as well as military applications of atomic energy. Thus it was decided. At last the way was open. Hurriedly but carefully, the scientific investigators, the technicians, gather together their instruments, their gauges, their meters, their recorders, and send them to the docks, to the ships. Only one step in the tremendous, time-consuming job of planning and preparation. All this, you ask? All this so a handful of weirdly garbed men can search in the rubble of a small Pacific isle? All this just for a test, an experiment, for unraveling one more mystery of the complex atom? Yes, all of this and more. All of this to satisfy the incredible intricacy of nuclear science, a science which demands everything, from an electronic telemetering gauge to an empty beer can. A science which also demands the highest caliber scientist and technician. So these men with their imaginative equipment moved to Eiwentok, lock, stock, and barrel. Some by ship, others by aircraft. But whether by sea or by air, they move into full partnership with the military establishment. Operation Sandstone from first to last is a joint effort, a meeting, a blending of the total energies of the United States. The difficult problems involved in carrying out a delicate, controlled experiment in an isolated, primitive area calls for united effort, for a strong scientific team supported by all branches of the military establishment. And since this test is outside the continental limits of the United States, exceptionally strict security measures are in order. Security is a major part of test operations and is a necessary part of most atomic energy development. And yet, despite security limitations, the peacetime applications of agriculture and medicine are open to the world. Scientific knowledge in itself is not a bad thing. It is tragic that in the case of atomic power, destruction goes hand in hand with construction. The age-old story of good and evil, keeping step with man in his fight for a better life. No, the answer to man's greatest problem is not in atomic energy in itself. The answer lies in the hearts and minds of men. The minds of men are creating this laboratory in the middle of an ocean, this tabletop barely 10 feet above the level of the sea. And on this, a machined spit of sand, the test instruments are installed, all facing the zero towers. Instruments which will give dimension, depth, and character to what exists in the minds of the scientists. Instruments designed to capture, record, measure, in a hurried millionth of a second, an event which occurs with the fleeting magic of a shooting star. Some massive, rugged, others small, delicate. Some commonplace, everyday, others marvels of engineering skill, capable of capturing happenings beyond our senses, the recording of light and neutron generation, the intensity and amount of gamma radiation. A harp gauge, the age-old symbol of peace and tranquility, becomes a measuring instrument of blast and pressure. A piston gauge, ready to absorb a cracking, jarring punch, more powerful than the collective kick of all the mules in Missouri. Instruments to give us clues which, among other things, will enable us to live longer, more useful and productive lives. It's staggering to realize how little we really know about atomic energy. The effect, for instance, on simple essentials like wood, paints, metal. We stand fascinated, like a child observing the wondrous effect of a nail flattened under the ponderous wheel of a locomotive. Photographic apparatus, as much a part of instrumentation as some of the more specialized devices, is ready. A lasting image, a permanent record to be carried away from this workshop, back for detailed analytical study in the States. Stationary banks of cameras in the photo towers, normal speed, high speed, color, black and white. Cameras protected from strange tropical fungus, a growth capable of eating through the very glass of the lens. Mobile cameras mounted in photo aircraft. Cameras capable of shooting 10,000 individual pictures every second. Cameras with lenses powerful enough to record the dust on a flea's whisker at 5 miles. Operation Sandstone is to have the most complete photographic coverage in human history. And this is not strange, For this oversized workshop demands eyes which can see in all directions at the same time. The spread-out nature of the project also demands a communication system comparable to a modern, medium-sized city. As time draws close, communications become vital as the various workbenches of the laboratory are tied together. This is experimentation on a large scale, requiring finely coordinated effort. A technician at one location needs to know at a precise and given moment what another is doing 10, 15, or 50 miles away. Air, land, and sea linked together as one. If direct contact is necessary, light planes ferry scientists from point to point. These are the elevators of the Eiwentok laboratory, the time savers. But time on Eiwentok is only important in terms of weather. This, remember, is an open-air laboratory. No blower fans here, no fume hoods to diffuse and dispense the radioactive cloud. Here, nature dictates the terms, and man has to wait, keeping a continuous check on upper-air movements. At last, the signal is called. Only hours remain, and the men leave the island. Not just an island now, but an armed island, a zero island. Quietly they take their leave. Without fuss or fanfare, they leave after 5 months of backbreaking effort. For a few, the men of science, a last-minute inspection, a last look at the instruments on which they pin their hopes, their dreams, their questions of the future. A final look before Zero Island becomes a deserted thing. A chamber is checked, a gauge is set, a timing station bolted, closed, sealed, so that even a wandering microbe cannot enter. Then they too leave. The open-air laboratory is ready. One might well wonder what Ben Franklin would say if he could see this. He with his paper kite and rusty key. Or Edison in his dusty attic, pondering over a few twisted wires. Yes, what would they have said? As the ships move out to safer waters, there is a vague, shadowy feeling among many that they, like medieval alchemists, have conjured up a potion far too powerful for mortal hands. But this is a feeling only of the moment. Underneath, all know that this is a controlled scientific experiment, that man has begun to master nuclear fission. This is simply a laboratory of the atomic age. Only minutes now. From a neighboring airfield, remotely controlled B-17s take off. Another tool for the scientists, pilotless aircraft, ready to go where man dares not go, into the heart of the radioactive cloud. And for a climax in ingenuity, to capture a fragment of that very same cloud here in a tropic sky and make it available for scientific study. Such is only one of the marvels of organization of Operation Sandstone. Only seconds remain now. From the master control station on another island, switches are thrown, sequence timers activated, hundreds of measuring devices all over the atoll placed on a single time reference. And now, the 10,000 men who have created this laboratory out of nothing watch it being destroyed. They have to look, to watch. The chain reaction of atoms building up into powerful exploding energy is still something which grips the imagination, something which cannot be ignored. The sun of early morning highlights the atomic cloud as it drifts away from Eiwentok. But the strange and mysterious ingredients in this cloud will not be lost. They have been captured and returned now to Earth, carried by the crewless but obedient drones. These flying guinea pigs are hot, radioactive. Technicians handle the collection equipment with instruments suggesting the sterile remoteness of medical forceps. Just as remote as the electronically controlled tank, which digs out soil samples under the direction of a helicopter. Man approaches his test island with caution. So this is how it came to be that on a certain spring morning in 1948, a handful of men dressed in impregnable clothing carefully poked through the rubble of an atom-blasted island. Men who search through ruins which hold something more than destruction. For hidden in the debris, cunningly protected, are records which will enable scientists of the Atomic Energy Commission to piece together the real story behind Operation Sandstone. And now the work really begins, the long, laborious task of assembling data, of making sure every scrap and tatter of evidence is sent to the laboratory ships or ferried back to the States. Some of the data collected will require months and perhaps years of study, of detailed analytical probing with slide rules, calculating machines, microscopes. But other analysis must be done here and now on the spot. Some of the results of nuclear fission have the characteristics of an open bottle of soda water, quickly dissipating into nothing. The results of Operation Sandstone, the produced tables, equations, charts, graphs, records, all of this compiled data will further point the way, will speed the development of atomic energy. But such knowledge comes not from paper and pencil alone. It comes out of controlled experimentation, out of deliberately creating a few microseconds of atomic light and sound. So it has been from the beginning. Trinity, Alamogordo, New Mexico, 1945. Operation Crossroads, Bikini, 1946. Able Day, Baker Day. Operation Sandstone, 3 detonations. These were fabricated releases of power, of energy locked up within the atom from the beginning of time, detonations rivaling the light and energy of the sun. The sun, to us the difference between life and death. It burns, stifles, dehydrates. But who would deny its warmth, its light, its beneficial radiation? So can it be with the energy man has created. The road is open, a road which may show us the cure for cancer, a road which may enable us to produce heat and power and new metals with atomic furnaces, new fuels, new ways to nourish the soil and correct vitamin and mineral deficiencies in the very food we eat. All this is possible, for ours is a twofold program. In the words of the President of the United States, I believe that our national policy for the vigorous development of atomic energy is sound. It is a balanced policy which makes us stronger from a military standpoint while at the same time promotes our peacetime goals. Yes, a balanced effort that will continue on and on until man, delving now into a basic secret of the universe, learns to control atomic energy for his own welfare, his own good. This can be our gift to generations yet unborn. In the long perspective of human history, Operation Sandstone may well have been Operation Milestone.
Photographic recording of the results of offensive bombardment long has been among the chief objectives of the United States Air Force. Such reconnaissance recorded the progress and historic achievements of our nation's air arm in World War II, from the jungle beaches of Leh and Salamau to the cities of Hitler's Germany, from targets in Italy and occupied France to the homeland of Japan, where the knockout punch was delivered by atomic weapons. The peacetime operations of the Air Force are as important as the assignments it drew in the global warfare of the past. Here at Eiwentok Atoll, the Air Force is given another top-drawer assignment: participation in the detonation of 3 new and untested atomic bombs. Here in the remote South Pacific, this extensive, highly secret project will be known as Operation Sandstone. Early in the planning phase, Lieutenant General John E. Hull, Joint Task Force 7 Commander, confers with Major General William E. Kepner, Deputy Task Force Commander and Commander of Air Force Operations. Brigadier General David Ogden, Commanding General of the Engineers assigned to the project, points out the geographic relationship of the test islands surrounding the Eiwentok Lagoon. The main base of operation in the atoll, Eiwentok Island itself, Parry, the site of the firing and timing station, Runnet, where Z-blast will be detonated, Aoman, Y-blast island, and Enderby, site of X-blast, first of this big 3 to be activated. On a coral shoal in the lagoon waters, a photographic tower will be constructed. From this shoal tower, remotely controlled cameras will record X-ray blasts on Enderby, yoke detonation on Aoman, and the explosion of Zebra bomb on Runnet. Following the planning phase, construction on the shoal tower is completed, and Army engineers, together with civilian construction units, continue with work on the zero and photo towers erected on land sites. All this activity was carried out under the constant press of time. One important time saver was a small L-5 liaison aircraft. These planes rendered invaluable service in the inter-island transport of key personnel and light equipment used in the completion of primary construction within the rigid time schedule. With the completion of the initial construction phase, the air fleet converges in force at the test area. Vital scientists and couriers, special observers, and key military personnel were all regular passengers of these aircraft. Among the first arrivals was Brigadier General Paul T. Cullum, charged with all photography on this project. Air Force transports form an airlift to the island. The delivery by air of important scientific equipment made possible the final installation within the exacting time schedule. An aircraft of a Hurricane Reconnaissance Squadron arrives from Guam. These and other long-range aircraft will be based here at nearby Kwajalein Island because of the longer runways and superior operational facilities. Photographic aircraft, veterans of atomic reconnaissance on Operation Crossroads, arrive on schedule. General Hull returns to the test area in an Air Force B-17 and is greeted on arrival by General Kepner and General Roger M. Ramey, commander of the Air Task Group. The steady stream of transport aircraft flowed into Kwajalein and Eiwentok. With the arrival of the drone units, the air echelon is complete. Flown to the site in a normal manner, these 4-engined aircraft, weighing over 30 tons, will operate on their missions around and through the deadly atomic cloud without a single man aboard them. Alongside Kwajalein's busy runway stands the air briefing auditorium. Inside, Generals Hull and Kepner meet with the commanders of the various air units, and decisions are coordinated at the command level before presentation to the operational units in the form of constant informational briefings. Briefings covering every phase of the Air Force mission.
Thompson briefing operations. Routes for all aircraft will be Kwajalein to Woto to Eiwentok area.
Colonel Cody, briefing radiological. Aboard each aircraft in this operation will be a qualified radiological defense officer. He will be equipped with instruments capable of detecting and measuring radiation. His primary duty is to act as a technical crew member, advising the aircraft commander on matters of radiological defense, and secondarily, in obtaining scientific data and the evaluation of this data for use in future Air Force operations. Time of detonation, a brilliant flash will occur. This flash has been estimated by some to be from 10 to 30 times the brilliance of the sun. The burst will be instantaneous, and the brilliance does not persist. Following the burst, a fireball will appear and a cloud arise. It will then move and dissipate in accordance with the winds at the various levels existent at that time.
Major Frank, briefing communications. Your attention is invited first to the call sign panel to my extreme right. You'll notice there the call signs for the various units and for the individuals concerned on the mission. There's a call sign for General Ramey, Bolivar, the call sign for the flagship, Big Ben. However, if you wish to get the flagship commander, Commander Air Forces, General Kepner, you would call Big Ben himself. The different units have their own call signs. Harrow for the drones, etc. And then we have for the radiological expert, Dangerous Dan. Our outstanding call sign, you might say, is for the time signal. The time signals broadcast from Parry Island, broadcast under the name of Baggy Pants. One caution in regard to the time signals. They are not broadcast continuously as a time signal might be picked up over the Washington station. They are an actual voice broadcast, at which time the man will say, fraternity, that's the call sign for all aircraft and units of Joint Task Force 7. Fraternity, this is Baggy Pants, stand by for hack at 10 minutes until H hour, at which time you will count off and a gong will sound prior to the actual time signal. Then there will be silence until the next time signal, according to the schedule as listed in Sandstone.
Major Gazaniga, briefing for weather. Synoptic situation. The air mass below 10,000 feet is unstable, therefore conducive to cumulus development and scattered rain showers. The upper air pattern indicates a trough condition existing.
So go the briefings. Each one is ended by an important warning.
Many of us will have access in varying amounts to information that may be useful to unfriendly powers if made available to them. Suffice it to say that where competent authority has determined that information should be classified, it is our individual responsibility to prevent such information from falling into enemy hands.
Meanwhile, weather reconnaissance aircraft continue their constant search for meteorological data. These crews range over hundreds of thousands of miles of trackless ocean in a never-ending quest for information on the restless movements of the upper air masses. This important information, vital to the entire operation, is made available to all task groups by means of the tightly knit Air Force communication system. An unmanned drone plane takes off. As the drone is airborne, a mother plane sweeps in low and takes over flight control. A master mother is always available to assume operation of the drone in the event of any malfunction in the control plane. The mission of these drone aircraft will be to obtain samples from the heart of the deadly radioactive cloud arising after the detonation. Years of research in the remote control of unmanned aircraft are represented in the successful electronic operation of this great four-engine airplane. The pilot of the drone rides in the nose of the control plane. By means of a television system, he checks the drone instrument panel and maintains control through the highly complex electronic impulse circuit. Process in the drone operation is the landing of these 30-ton flying laboratories. These landings require the most precise and careful coordination to prevent damage to the delicate instruments, the aircraft itself, and to ground personnel. Following normal landing, the plane is braked to a smooth stop, and sample recovery crews assume control. In practice, the same precautions are used as will be exercised after radiological contamination. Engines are cut by means of an external switch, and the plane towed from the runway to make room for other landings. Tests are made on the effectiveness of a new emergency arresting system. The plane comes in at approximately 100 miles per hour, touches down, and rolls freely, without the application of brakes, to the far end of the runway. The runaway drone is brought to a smooth stop by specially woven elastic nylon rope. Meanwhile, photoplanes continue their practice mission. Aerial cameramen sight motion picture and still cameras on Zero Island as the practice orbits are flown around the detonation site. Concurrent with flight operations, the Air Force ground crews are faced with an endless program of maintenance and repair. The success of the Air Force mission is dependent on the traditional skill and ability of these men to prevent the malfunctions of equipment. Final phases of preparation for X-Day begin. Local weather forecasts assume major importance.
Hey, son.
Good morning, gentlemen. Be seated. Gentlemen, I have just come from a weather briefing where General Hull has decided that we will go ahead, and that means that tomorrow is X-ray day. We're about to implement a plan that you've been working on for months. I expect success. However, I want each and every one of you to be vigilant and on the alert for emergencies. Stop them before they start, if possible. I want you to keep me informed of anything that's not going according to routine. Drills, is everything all set?
Yes, sir. We're ready.
Above all, gentlemen, heads up and see that everything is going smoothly. See you later.
Final checks are made on all installations, and cameras are given a few dry runs to ensure proper functioning. Scientific aspects of this explosion will be recorded in every conceivable photographic manner, from the high-speed motion picture cameras capable of exposing film at the rate of 10,000 frames per second, from normal 35 and 16 millimeter cameras using black and white, color, and infrared film, specially designed equipment such as the O'Brien smear camera, telephoto still cameras, all remotely triggered through the complex electronic circuits relaying impulses from the control station. The installations on all camera towers are complete. On Eiwentok, the manually controlled photographic equipment is focused on 0 point. Sensitive sound equipment is being set up to record through a special directional microphone the actual auditory impressions from the blast. Photo equipment is checked and delivered for installation in the photo plane. Replacing the machine guns in the turrets and blisters throughout the plane are motion picture cameras capable of recording every aspect of the forthcoming detonation. As huge lenses are thrust through the observation ports, the planes appear to have 100 eyes, an illusion which approaches reality, for through these lenses will pass a lasting impression of the devastating power of the atomic bomb. These camera eyes will circle high above 0 point, some directly over the blast. Plans and preparations have been completed. The Air Force is ready. Takeoff times are announced. The tension begins to increase. Now the tedious practicing will pay off. The operational plan specifies a predetermined position in the orbit for each of these aircraft. Only through familiarity with procedure can this be possible. Familiarity with procedure becomes doubly imperative when the unknown potential of this atomic bomb is to be tested in the pre-dawn darkness, where course and relative position can be determined only by instruments. On Eiwentok, close to Zero Island, the drone planes are prepared for pilotless takeoff. Here, the tension is really high, for this will be the first mission of unmanned drone aircraft on a nighttime operation. The complexities of drone control are greatly multiplied at night, for no accurate visual check can be made on the drone's performance. All planes are on station. The control pilot guides the operated drone directly over the pre-designated point of blast. Dawn breaks and reveals the deadly radioactive atomic cloud. Blasted Enderby Island, far below, is revealed to the drone as it emerges from the atomic cloud. Cloud trackers are already on their station around the cloud, plotting its course and size, making observations of contaminated air, standing by to warn ground stations should the radioactive mass change its course to pass over occupied zones. The RadSafe monitor keeps the aircraft at a safe distance. As the cloud lifts, the survey plane sweeps low over the radioactive crater. Monitors take accurate radiological readings of the most contaminated of the blasted areas. Back in the control room, the shifting pattern of all aircraft is plotted for General Kepler. Their mission of cloud penetration complete, the drones are returned to Eiwentok. Air control is relinquished to the ground crews. Landing is effected by an electronic system similar to that used in the control plane. This is the crucial moment in the drone operation, and all hands sweat in these unmanned B-17s with their cargo of priceless scientific samples. Because of radioactivity gathered within the cloud, the drones are dangerous, and mechanical devices are used whenever possible to prevent the exposure of personnel. As a safety precaution, personnel are exposed to radioactivity for only a minimum period of time. Filter papers containing the samples are removed from the trap. After packing in lead containers, they're prepared for air shipment to laboratories within the United States. After removal of the samples, the drones are decontaminated with a special cleansing solution. Photo planes return with their valuable records of the world's 6th atomic explosion. Immediately upon landing, all aircraft and crews are monitored for any harmful radiation. As the last photo aircraft returns, the air operation for X-Day is reaching its final phase. The precious film is unloaded in the presence of security guards, and along with other valuable scientific data, is loaded for shipment by courier to the United States. Even as the last courier plane departs, marking the end of X-Day phase of Operation Sandstone, preparations are underway for the second blast on the forthcoming Y-Day. With the initial preparation for Y-Day completed and favorable weather predicted, the tempo of last-minute activity is accelerated. Once again, these crews will face an unknown quantity, for the bomb to be tested on Y-Day is of a different and even more powerful type than that used on X-Day. Y-Day, 0 hour. Mute testimony to the devastating effectiveness of this new atomic bomb. I could go on and tell you about this, but I'd rather have you see the actual setup.
This is a sound test just before Zebra Day. This is about 1900 minus Zebra Day. The camera is set up on Perry Island Tower. The sound test will be shot tomorrow morning. This is exactly the same position the camera will be in. This will give you an idea of the position the tower was in before the blast. The sound will be about 22 seconds after the blast is shown on the screen.
This is what happened on Zebra Day.
Hello, fraternity. This is Baggy Pants. Stand by for final time signal. Stand by for final time signals. At the sound of the gong, it will be minus 30 seconds. Minus 30 seconds. At the sound of the gong, it will be minus 20 seconds. Minus 20 seconds. At the sound of the gong, it will be minus 10 seconds. Minus 10 seconds.
Pictures you have just seen are a grim warning of what the next war, if it should ever come, God forbid, can be like. Atomic bombs bring to air power a weapon that staggers the imagination. Our main defense against such a tragedy rests in the strength and alertness of our own Air Force, the one that gets there fastest with the mostest. And how do we get there fastest with the mostest? Through the wings of the Air Force.
Serving as the principal laboratory ship and as home and headquarters of the scientific staff is the Albemarle, sister ship of the Curtis. Like other ships of the force, she is a weather station gathering data for daily forecasts. Later, she'll be integrated into an extensive weather network. Now, this is the way a deck is scrubbed. And this is the way a deck is, decorated. But while the work of the deck force sometimes coincides with leisure for the passengers sunning themselves in the balmy sea air, the ship is taut and happy. Below, the scientific staff spends long hours consulting on technical and operational problems. With the armed services in supporting roles, it is the civilian scientific group, drawn from many laboratories but directed by the Atomic Energy Commission, that is at the heart of the experiments. These men will determine the relative merits of 3 new weapons. Many tasks of the scientists demand air-conditioned laboratories. Temperature and humidity control and dust-free conditions are essential, particularly while delicate instrument assemblies are being made. Thousands of spare parts are stored by the scientists, but skilled machinists of the ship's force often manufacture spares in emergencies. Almost equally as many tasks are being performed aboard the carrier Bairoko. Radiological safety classes conducted underway afford an example of the excellence of the operation from the standpoint of national preparedness and security. Officers drawn from all the armed services are briefed on radiological dangers and trained in the techniques and problems of radiological safety. Various projects also provide opportunities for testing under field conditions many new instruments, operational procedures, and decontamination and safety techniques. The laboratories on the Bairoko, hence, are important at all stages of the operation. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Mount McKinley, the task force commander, General Hull, has the fount of crossroads experience in his deputies, Rear Admiral Parsons, the Navy's Director of Atomic Defense, and Major General Kepner, the commander of air forces, both Admiral Blandy's deputies in Operation Crossroads. As a command ship, the McKinley has earned her title, the Mighty Mac. She again proves her ability to tackle a difficult job and get it done. No, not one job, but hundreds of different jobs. She is the command post, the information center, the weather central, the Naval Task Group headquarters, and the station of the air commander. In and out of her communications rooms flow thousands of messages coordinating the task force. Because of the nature of the operation, encrypted traffic is heavy. But busy as are her communications channels, there is stress on all measures of security too, and radar operators alert at their posts bespeak caution and preparedness. But as the main body of the task force heads for the forward areas, there is now an increased emphasis on airlift, particularly to Kwajalein, busy hive of air activity. Considerable rehabilitation has been conducted of facilities little used since World War II, or Operation Crossroads. Airlift is important in the logistics plan, for it telescopes time and abbreviates distance, linking the continental United States to the Marshall Islands. High-priority freight and important personnel are sped to many destinations by aircraft of the Military Air Transport Services. Airlift gives further flexibility to a complicated operations plan, permitting critical materials to be delivered with minimum delay and allowing difficult schedules to be met. To the Air Force has been assigned the majority of air duties, and here at Kwajalein are based the principal air components. Included in the flight plan are Navy Air Sea Rescue units, whose amphibians are equipped with small boats that can be parachuted to the surface of the sea. Navy-converted B-17s are used for anti-submarine patrol. "356 miles away, the airstrips at Eiwentok Island are being prepared for drone aircraft operations, also conducted by the Air Force. Drone barriers are erected and searchlights installed. Certain areas of the proving ground are leveled, while at other points, earth barricades are formed to absorb or deflect the expected blast pressures. Activity reaches high pitch. Now hundreds of jobs are being done at once. Work, work, work. Eiwentok, ho! The main body of the task force arrives and anchors in the lagoon. The ships are anchored within easy sight of the Zero Towers. At last, it is evident what a major part the Navy plays, why nearly 3/5 of the task force of 10,000 are drawn from Navy ranks. To supply and house, feed and guard an operation of this sort requires various elements of sea power: tankers, destroyers and destroyer escorts, transports, tenders, amphibious craft, repair ships, refrigerator and provision ships, and a host of specialized craft. In this tropical lagoon, a virtual community afloat, the ships compose a versatile and powerful force, capable of many tasks, doing all the tasks assigned, doing them well. Passengers delivered, 2,700. Food delivered, nearly 2,000 tons. Drinking water manufactured for units not self-sustaining, 22 million gallons. Diesel fuel delivered, better than 1.5 million gallons. Motor gasoline delivered, more than 500,000 gallons. Aviation gasoline delivered, more than 600,000 gallons. Black fuel delivered, nearly 6 1/3 million gallons. Men and equipment go ashore. Many phases of the instrumentation projects must still be carried out. As the scientific groups reach their outdoor laboratory, they find that each zero island is being transformed into a virtual tabletop for the experiments. Work goes on apace. Rigors of the tropical climate make each new project a challenge, each day's work a trial, and each completed task a triumph. Will the job be done on time? It must be done on time. But there is sweat beneath the pitiless sun, and the coral sand, now robbed of its vegetation, provides many a trap for even those vehicles designed to operate on difficult terrain. Difficulty enough? No, sir. Where the loose soil has not been stabilized, wind pelts the workers with a hurricane of sand, making windscreens a necessity for many projects. In a dual experiment by Los Alamos scientists to detect the presence of neutrons at various distances from the zero tower, cables are set out. One cable, to which flotation planks have been attached for the sake of buoyancy, is hauled out to the lagoon. These balsa rafts, lowered from the Albemarle, serve as platforms for sample containers that are to be moored to the cable like a string of tiny islands. Also oriented from the foot of the zero tower, a second cable experiment is set up with sample containers mounted on tripods and variously shielded. Like a gigantic clothesline, the cables with neutron-detecting samples attached will be reeled in after the detonation. Thousands of man-hours are consumed by jobs that are sheer physical labor. Soil stabilization is necessary to minimize dust and to solidify earth mounds that will absorb or deflect blast. Coaxial cables and the hundreds of instruments must be dust-free if they're to render the precise results demanded by the operation. To avoid dust, many instruments are installed a minimum interval before abandonment of the zero island. Since data must be precise, each wall of these blockhouses gets an identifying number. This structure is a reference too. Tower cameras aimed at the fireball stage of the explosion will include it as a known measurement. Important to the architects of an atomic age is the study of blast effects and blast deflection in relation to various surfaces, angles, and structural techniques. These strange objects, preformed in the United States and shipped to Eiwentok for installation by the Army engineers, comprise a test conducted by the Navy's Bureau of Yards and Docks. The structures are of different shape and size, set in different footings, and disposed differently to the zero tower. Hence, a great variety of data will result. To make certain that atomic secrets are safeguarded is the job of the Security Force, a combined civilian military group who have charge of segregated areas and who make certain that access to these areas is granted only to authorized personnel. Many jobs remain to be done in the short interval remaining. As preparation for future tests, animal chambers of the Navy's Bureau of Medicine and Surgery are being given a limited trial ashore and in the lagoon. Thermal plaques of the Bureau of Ships contain colored and glossed material, plastics, and fabrics. Gamma stations have collimating tubes correctly aimed to channel radiation from the fireball and the rising cloud, to which ionization chambers within the shelter must be aligned. This is another experiment of the Atomic Energy Commission that requires precision and infinite care. Access ports of the gamma stations are shielded with cans of boric acid to absorb stray neutrons. Military personnel whose tasks for the present are completed are being evacuated to a safe distance at sea. Once afloat, they are again briefed in shipboard procedures to guard against all emergencies. Security measures are even more painstaking as events go ahead with slow crescendo. Radio facsimile brings weather information that is added to the great flow of communications traffic aboard the Mount McKinley. Only with such a flow of information can General Hull and his staff coordinate the great undertaking. Disposition of the Navy units is reported by Rear Admiral Dennebrink, the Naval Task Group Commander, while Major General Kepner gives the air status. With the staff so readily assembled for discussion of interrelated problems, flexibility is imparted to a complex operations plan. Weather information is vital, for weather is the crux of the time schedule. Upon the forecasters depend many of the command decisions now to be made. Long-range weather planes rove great areas of the Pacific to study wind structures, cloud formations, and temperatures. Weather information has high priority as communications traffic, but knowing the burdens that would be placed on communications, particularly on radio teletype and radio telephone circuits, engineers of the armed services have planned their networks well. Units afloat and ashore are bound together by networks that demonstrate daily an ingenious efficiency. At Kwajalein, Air Force photoplanes are fueled and camera installations completed for full-scale dress rehearsal. Rehearsal has imparted to the photo teams the precision needed for difficult photographic assignments. Of the photo towers at the proving ground, most interesting is that built on a coral shoal in the middle of the lagoon. Here, batteries of motion picture cameras running at various speeds to record the phenomena of atomic explosion will all be remotely triggered. Augmenting them are banks of still cameras. Last-minute projects are now being accomplished by scientific groups still on the Zero Island. Blast harps strung with soft wire are set out to give direct readings of blast pressures. Blast cans, called penny gauges, another economical method of obtaining direct readings of the blast, are put in place. Film, sensitive to gamma rays, is being distributed at hundreds of places, some exposed and some concealed in the blast structures. Navy experiments are many. This channeled device, called a film howitzer, will provide data on gamma penetration when angles are involved. Nearby, snugly tied in glass cloth, is a packet of medical samples. Between steel plates representing various hull thicknesses, film will measure radiation penetration in relation to shielding. The Bureau of Ships also wants to study thermal effects and determine decontamination procedures in relation to these racks of paints, varnishes, enamels, woods, and plastics, all to be exposed to atomic explosion. As a guide in the design of modern ships, the Bureau of Ships needs an abundance of information, and the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, searching for a simple, inexpensive, but accurate index of exposure to gamma radiation, is testing these crystals that will change color according to the amount of irradiation. Such tests may have far-reaching effects in the exploration of many phases of an atomic era. Shielding afforded by cement is being studied, too. Biological assay material exposed for Navy medical studies is guarded from tropic heat and humidity by wrappings of glass wool. Inside the timing station, the last brick is fitted into the massive lead coffin that shields the delicate recording cameras from unwanted radiation. Elsewhere on the Zero Island, structures are sealed. Sentinel against the sky, this colossus of a zero tower is a symbol of a job done, a weapon installed, a laboratory ready. Time is short. Security guards and the scientists are the last to leave. The major ships now stand away from the Zero Island, although still within the lagoon. Behind is the giant laboratory, mute, deserted. The detonation party races from Zero Island to Zero Island to close and lock the switches that knit the Zero Tower to the distant control panel. By radio telephone, frequent reports go to the scientific director. Nightfall brings a new assortment of tasks, each one important. Now is no time for let-up. The never-sleeping eyes of radar reach out, lest there be intruders into the deserted, restricted areas. Communications has a heavy responsibility. The entire task force has been stirred to intense activity. At Eiwentok, in eerie darkness, the Air Force drones take off with a perfection born of diligence and skill. They must plunge into the radioactive cloud on sampling missions. Nearby at the control island, a telemeter tower looms up, its antenna ready to receive signals from the blast footings that scientists within the telemetering station can record and interpret. The detonation party arrives and mounts to the control station, ready for X-ray day and the world's 6th atomic explosion. What secrets will be plucked from the darkness and the unknown? At what new frontiers does man stand?
Stand by for final time signal. Stand by for final time signal. At the sound of the gong, it will be minus 20 seconds. Stand by. At the sound of the gong, it will be minus 10 seconds. Minus 10 seconds.
Etched against the morning sky, drones start into the radioactive cloud to gather air samples. Helicopters head toward the Zero Island. And the drones come home, their spectacular jobs done. They have snatched radioactive samples from the cloud in special filter traps, samples that will give an index to weapon efficiency. Each person returning from exposure to radioactive areas, whether that exposure was in the sky or on the ground, must be carefully monitored. Among the many missions performed by the Navy helicopters, swift recovery of samples from the water and land cables proves the versatility of these craft. The samples are dropped to neutron measurement crews on the deck of the Albemarle and rushed to the ship's laboratories for counting procedures. Helicopter shuttle service was a great boon to the scientific projects. Small groups go ashore for recovery of instruments and inspection of installations. They are clad in disposable clothing and wear masks to prevent the ingestion of radioactive dust. Monitors guide them, restrict their movements, and limit their stay. The timing station has weathered the fury of atomic blast and has withstood the terrific ground shock. Vital records of the experiments are safe within. Everywhere are the telltale exhibits of the violence of the explosion. Some tell a vivid story and need no further explanation. Others require careful scrutiny. Assembly of data begins swiftly, although there must be no lingering in radioactive areas. Navy medical men gather up sample packets that will provide diversified material for careful laboratory analysis. As data is computed aboard the Albemarle, even a simple beer can renders an account of its adventure on the Zero Island. Weight of water in the crumpled can will give the scientist a direct reading of blast pressures from pre-computed tables. Other data has been recorded on negatives, which may be examined like this one. As busy as the scientists have been before, they still lose no time now in analyzing the results and compiling figures needed by the test director and the Atomic Energy Commission. But the proof testing of 2 additional new weapons remains. Stand by for Yoke Day. Stand by for Zebra Day. To the men of the task force, might unleashed by new atomic weapons is great indeed. But greater still is the might of a mighty nation working together. The Atomic Energy Commission's new proving grounds and these new tests were made possible by teamwork. And while this account stressed the story of the Navy's contribution, it was a contribution to a joint task force and to a united effort in Operation Sandstone.